Welcome to channel. Today, we explore story filled with unexpected twists. Please, subscribe and like to stay updated. Let's begin. Lieutenant Logan Bryan assembled our squad early one morning in late April. Stevens, a freshly promoted second lieutenant, was sent to our squad to replace a seasoned veteran. Just terrific. He wouldn't be the only one I'd have to break in. Intel had informed us that 3 hostages had been kidnapped by a terrorist group operating around 180 kilometers from our location, one of which was a young American lady named Emily Foster. She was kept prisoner in exchange for a ransom from her relatives. Our unit had been chosen to intercede and try a rescue. We were sent to a location around 6 clicks from where they were being detained. It took us around 50 minutes to get to the spot. Lieutenant Stevens directed me and my spotter to take position on a little slope about 550 meters from the front of the structure, while he and the rest of the squad moved to the back. In the United States Marine Corps, I am a gunnery sergeant and sniper. My name is Liam Carter, but I use my nickname, Liam, for obvious reasons. My spotter is Lance Corporal Owen Riley. We had barely taken up our position when we saw 3 captives being escorted out of a nondescript building. They were clad in baggy orange jumpsuits with fabric hoods covering their heads. Their executioners compelled them to kneel before them. The 3 terrorists were wrapped in long flowing robes from head to toe, with just a tiny strip of their face visible and their hands exposed. The tallest of the 3 attackers stood behind a kneeling captive, holding a knife in his hands. I aimed my M110 recoil-operated semi-automatic, a hefty SASS or Special Application Scoped rifle, at him immediately as he pulled back his hand with the knife. I shot before the 7.62 mm bullet hit him in the forehead. I sighted and shot at the second target before moving on to the third guy. My spotter whispered in my ear, "Target 1 down, 2 down, 3 down," in less than 1.5 seconds. 3 guys lay lifeless on the mud. "Where's the guy with the camera?" I asked Dawson. 20 meters to the left, he said. I soon located him in my 30 mm scope as he rose to his knees, holding a revolver. Before he could shoot, I shot him in the back of the head. Then we both heard the sound of flashbang grenades, followed by gunshots from the building. Lieutenant Stevens stepped from the building and motioned for the 2 of us to join him. When we got at the scene, the 3 captives' hoods had been removed, and our combat medic, pharmacist mate Jack Barrett, also known as Doc, began treating them. As I approached, Stevens replied, "Gunny, you just had to shoot them in the head, right? Do you realize how difficult it is to recognize them?" "Yes, sir, I do. But you never know what type of body armor they may be wearing behind those hefty ropes." I said, "Headshots are sure kills, sir." To prove my claim, I approached one of the deceased terrorists and removed his shirt, exposing a high-tech Kevlar vest. I doubt that shooting him in the chest from where I was would have stopped him. "Sir, you are correct, Gunny. I should know better than to question you. We'll collect some blood samples and fingerprints to see if the forensics lads can identify them." "Oh, there are 4 more bodies in the home. It seems that one of them had his tool bitten off and bled to death. Dawson murdered the other 2. We will stay here for a time. Gunny, you and Doc will carry the captives back to base." As the lieutenant finished speaking, I heard the characteristic sounds of the Boeing MH-139's rotors approaching. As we boarded, Doc approached and screamed in my ear. The 3 of them were very thoroughly drugged up to make them amenable with what was about to happen. I gave them something to counterbalance what they were given. The 2 youngest ones are not doing very well. They'll remain with them, but you'll have to deal with the elder one once she recovers from the affects of what she was given. She'll feel bewildered and terrified. Do whatever it takes to keep her calm. Sure enough, around 25 minutes after we took off for our journey return, she regained consciousness, sprang up, and began struggling and thrashing her arms about. I managed to wrap her in my arms and bring her down into my lap, speaking soothing things into her ear. She gradually calmed down, but as I attempted to release her, she started fighting again. I had no alternative but to hug her to my body for the whole 80 minutes of the journey back to base. When I looked beyond the filth and dried tears on her face, I saw she was a really attractive young lady. Over the following 75 minutes, I had time to think on my life and what had led me to this point. When my father went for one of his lengthy business travels, I was nearly 16. One morning, as he did every time Dad departed on one of these excursions, he pulled me aside and said, "Liam, make sure to take good care of your mother and sister for me while I am away. You are the man of the house until I return." "I will, Pop. I promise you will take care of them," I said him. I had no idea how significant that vow would be in my life at the time. My father never returned. It was the midst of winter, and a terrible ice storm had hit the day before he departed. His automobile collided with a piece of black ice while driving on the still icy roadways. He was unable to recover control and slammed into a huge tree. We were informed that he died instantaneously. His life insurance was just enough to cover his burial and a few months of mortgage payments. Mom worked at the local library, but the salary wasn't enough to sustain the three of us, her, my younger sister, and me. She obtained a part-time job, working from the time she got off at the library until 11 p.m., as well as all day Saturday and Sunday. We barely made ends meet, even with the additional money. Working all those hours eventually took its toll on her. She was often exhausted and quickly became worn out. As soon as I reached 15, I took a part-time job working at the market after school and on weekends. I gave my mother all I earned. It helped, and she was able to reduce some of the overtime hours she was working. When I reached 17, I left the market and took a work on the loading dock of a nearby factory. I worked the night shift from when school got out until midnight. It paid much more, and Mom was finally able to leave her part-time work. Despite working so many hours, I excelled in school and graduated as valedictorian of my high school class. My guidance counselor urged me to take the SATs, and I received a perfect score on the mathematics component while missing a perfect score on the verbal section by just 2 points. I received offers from various universities and schools, but I quickly realized that, even with a full academic scholarship, we would be unable to cover the incidental fees. Furthermore, my mother and sister relied on my money at the loading dock at the plant to make ends meet. My sister was still too young to start a job, so I opted to forego college and continue working at the factory. I was bound and determined to uphold my commitment to my father. Then the economy tanked, and the plant was forced to shut. There were no additional job openings. I decided to examine the military. The Army appealed to me, so I joined. My mother was upset when I informed her, but she grudgingly agreed when I told her I would be receiving 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. All of my clothes would be given, along with free healthcare and the ability to enroll in online courses for college credit. I made arrangements to have the majority of my monthly earnings transferred home to Mom and my sister to replace what I was earning at the factory. I was sent to Fort Campbell in Kentucky for basic training. It was challenging. I kept my eyes and ears alert and did what I was ordered without inquiry or debate. I had a great time on the rifle range the first time we attended. I had always had exceptional vision and hand-eye coordination, so I performed quite well at the range. My drill teacher was amazed by my extraordinary ability to group my shots within 1/4 of an inch on every target at any distance up to 400 yards using just the weapon's iron sights. I performed so well that after boot camp, I was sent to sniper school. After completing sniper school, I received an extra 1.5 years of training before being transferred abroad for my first tour of duty in Afghanistan. I was only starting my 4th tour. Being stationed in a conflict zone entitled me for additional hazardous duty pay. That, along with no income tax, enticed me to continue volunteering for the subsequent trips. I could really need the money since my sister was now in college, and the money I gave them came in very useful. I jerked out of my reverie as the lady on my lap started fidgeting and writhing about. She had managed to remove her arms from my bare hold, and they were now tightly wrapped around my neck, her head buried under my chin. When we landed, I assisted her out of the plane and into the arms of the medical team that had there to greet us. She put her hand behind my head, drew it down to her lips, and kissed me deeply. "Thank you for everything," she murmured in my ear before kissing me again. Doc phoned me from inside the chopper before I could react. "Gunny, help me with these two. They're still in very horrible condition." I returned to the airplane and re-entered. Doc was dealing with 2 scared young females who seemed to be in their early to mid-teens. Their experience had left them terribly traumatized, and now they were surrounded by strangers. No surprise they were upset and refused to move. Doc scooped up the larger of the 2 and left the chopper, while I followed, holding the other small girl. They were both weeping and clinging onto us as we approached the medical personnel. When they spotted the elder lady already in the van, they relaxed and allowed themselves to be seated next to her. After they departed, I grabbed my firearm and went to my quarters. I field stripped and properly cleaned the weapon. After bathing and changing into new BDUs, I headed over to the hospital and stopped one of the medical personnel. "Can I see Ms. Williams?" I asked. A doctor overheard my plea and approached me. "Do not be afraid, Gunny." We performed a blood test on her to ascertain what she had received. Those scumbags filled her up with all sorts of garbage. It will take at least 24 hours to clear her system before we can let the Intel lads debrief her. The best prediction is that you'll be able to visit her in around 2 or 3 days. Thank you, Doctor. Will you tell her I stopped by to visit her? She doesn't know my name, so just tell her I'm the man from the helicopter. I can do that, he said. I awoke to saw a nurse standing over me. The first words out of my lips were, "Where am I, and what day is it?" Well, it's just after 3 p.m., and you were brought in yesterday morning, Tuesday, just before 11:15 a.m. I was informed you had a tough couple of days, but everything seems to be great. Are you open to a few of visitors? She asked. I guess so, I said. Good afternoon, Ms. Williams. I hope you are feeling better. I'm Major Ethan Lewis, and this is Captain Caleb Morgan. To put your mind at rest, your parents have been informed of your rescue and safe return. I've made arrangements for you to speak with your father as soon as we finish here. We are from military intelligence, and we have some questions for you if you are feeling well enough to answer them. I suppose so. What would you want to know? Why don't we begin when you were caught and held captive and work our way up? Okay, she said, hesitantly. When those men broke into the facility I was working at, they went from room to room shooting anyone who resisted. When they came upon me, I was counseling 2 young girls who had been sexually abused. I heard one of them say that I was the one they were looking for, and their leader remarked that I should be worth at least $12 million. They tied and blindfolded the 3 of us and placed us in a truck. They drove for what seemed like hours, finally stopping at when I regained my senses. My mouth was full of blood. I spit it out, along with the large pieces of flesh and skin. One of the men came into the room, slapped me, and forced me to drink a bottle of water. After a few minutes, I began to feel really funny. That's the last thing I remember until I regained my senses sometime later. I was in some sort of helicopter and sitting on a man's lap. He had his arms wrapped tightly around me. Telling me that everything was going to Major Harris informed me that I had been abducted and held for ransom by a terrorist group that dominated that region of Syria. The guy who attempted to force himself on me was Omar al-Faris, the faction's commander. He bled to death because you bit him. I was informed his comrades were so enraged by your acts that they decided you needed to die. The water you were forced to drink contains a hazardous combination of medicines intended to render you incapable of resisting or fighting for your life. Captain Cole informed me that I was spared from being beheaded by a Marine sniper who shot my executioner and 3 others before they could kill me or the 2 juvenile girls. Who was the guy with me in the helicopter? Ms. Williams, it was the same guy. Major Harris interjected, Gunnery Sergeant Liam Carter. What else can you tell me about him? Not much, I'm afraid, Major Harris said. All we know is that he is excellent at what he does. He's just starting his 4th trip here. He never takes time off to go home between tours. The guys in his squad respect and appreciate him, yet he seems to have little social life. He came to check on you many hours after you were brought here. The medical professionals informed him that he could not accept any visitors until the medicines were flushed from his system and we had the chance to debrief him. I would really want to meet him. Could you please organize it? They'll see what I can do, Captain Cole said, exiting the room. He returned a few minutes later and informed me that Gunnery Sergeant Hall was on a mission and would be gone till the following day. I informed his superior officer about your request. He told me that he would send it as soon as Sergeant Hall returned. The next day, there was a tap on my door, and a young guy entered the room. I'm Gunnery Sergeant Hall, he offered as a formal introduction. I'm Emily Foster, I said. Please call me Sophia, not Ms. Williams. Fair enough. Just call me Liam. It's what my mother and sister call me. This was the first time I saw him without his helmet and heavy body armor. My God, he was a total hunk. When an orderly came in with my dinner, Liam stood up and announced he would be leaving so I could eat. He was about 6'2" tall, had dark brown hair, and blue eyes. His voice was deep and soft, and his smile lit up the room when he spoke. After we finished the "How are you?" and fine part of the conversation, we had a long discussion about ourselves. I couldn't believe how quickly time had passed. Don't leave, please, I begged. I can eat this cold. I would want to continue conversing with you. He sat back down, and we spoke late into the evening. I told Liam about my life as a spoiled little rich girl, and how my grandfather insisted that I do something to help others before coming into the trust fund he had established for me. I told him how much the short period of time I spent here had opened up my eyes to what was really important in life, and then he briefly recounted his life from the time his father died up to the present. I was amazed at how much he had sacrificed in order to when he finally did leave. I gave him a thank you kiss and began eating my dinner, which never tasted as good as that cold food. I had never believed in the old cliché love at first sight until today, and I wanted him to love me as well. Late that evening, a doctor arrived with the results of my most recent blood test. Everything was normal, and all poisons had been eliminated from my system. Thank God, I said quietly. The medical staff and I anticipate you'll be able to fly home in a few days. You will need an escort from Syria to Germany, as well as one to your hometown. Why don't you phone your parents tonight and see what they can arrange in terms of an escort for you? The doctor stated as he departed. Because it was after 11 p.m., I reasoned that with the time difference, it was just past 2 p.m. back home, and Dad would be at his office, so I told him what I needed. Are you certain about this? You know, I'll have to check him out before I agree, he said. In my sad little girl voice, I pleaded, I don't care, Daddy, just do it for me, please, Daddy, please. After obtaining reassurance from his only child that her health was okay, Thomas Foster requested his secretary to have Miles Griffin report to him as soon as possible. George, I want everything you can find out about this person, and I need it by 9 a.m. tomorrow, he said, giving him a piece of paper with a name on it. Extremely short notice, boss. I can do it, but it will be expensive. George, I was going to pay $12 million in ransom money to bring my daughter home. Spend whatever you need to. Simply get it done. My mobile phone called a little after 8 p.m., and the display simply said Thompson. Mr. Williams, I am faxing you all I have under the name you provided me. It was an easy task. The man is a true straight arrow. There is nothing negative in his background. He is an up-and-coming guy, George said. As I finished my second cup of coffee, one of the privates who worked in the administrative office approached me and said, The colonel wants to see you in his office, right now, Gunny. When I arrived, I was immediately brought into Colonel Mason Hunter's office. Have a seat, Gunny, I was told. Colonel Jacobs took a piece of paper from his desk, read it, and then stated to me, Gunny, Ms. Emily Foster will be freed from medical care tomorrow and will travel home. She'll need an escort from here to Munich International Airport. When she arrives, she will be welcomed by someone who will take her to Boston and on a commercial airplane back to the United States. Why me, Colonel? Why was I selected out for this mission? I do not have that answer for you. Will you take this assignment? Do I have any choices, sir? Do not be afraid, Gunny. Get your things together. You leave tomorrow at 9:32. Yes, sir, I said. He'll be sure to see that she gets there safely. As I was about to depart, he gave me a package. This is her passport, a couple of her credit cards, and some of her personal items, including her cell phone we recovered from where she was kidnapped. The following morning, I met Sophia at the airfield, returned her passport, credit cards, and other belongings to her, and we boarded. I managed to snag a window seat and the accompanying seat next to it, right by the emergency exit. As we rolled out for takeoff, Sophia grabbed my hand, loosened her seatbelt, and rested her head on my shoulder. As she spoke straight into my ear, she said, I didn't get much sleep last night because I was scared about returning home. Would you mind if I closed my eyes for a moment? I nodded my agreement, and she reached over with her other hand and grasped my arm. Despite the loud talking all around us, she managed to doze off as she snuggled even closer to me, and I imagined what it would be like if we could share moments like this forever. Then reality set in, and I realized that she would leave in a few hours to continue on the second leg of her journey. When we arrived at Munich International Airport, we deplaned and I went with her into the terminal where she was supposed to meet her escort for the rest of her journey home. Instead, we were welcomed by a two-star general. There's a change in plans, he said. The escort who was supposed to accompany her was unable to fulfill his commitment. The general gave me fresh orders, along with an envelope containing travel papers and instructions, and then wished us a safe voyage before leaving. I didn't see the large grin on Sophia's face when she heard about the change in plans. She grabbed my arm and gazed up at me. Looks like you're stuck with me for a few more days. Appears so, I said, secretly thrilled by the change of circumstances that would enable me to continue living in my ideal world. When we arrived in Hamburg, the instructions were to take the S-Bahn surface rail from the Hauptbahnhof, main railway station, to the airport, then to the Hilton Garden Inn near the airport, where the accommodations were prepaid. The next morning, we were to go to the Lufthansa counter and Terminal Liam took my hand and led me toward the waiting train at the Frankfurt station. Because it was a local, we would have to change trains twice. once in Darmstadt and the second time at the Stuttgart Hauptbahnhof. The first 2 legs of our journey went smoothly. The trains were crowded, so all we could do was gaze out the window at the German countryside. As we walked through the Stuttgart station toward the track where the Hamburg train would depart, a crazy man Liam pushed me to the floor and threw his body on top of me. I was aware of bullets striking the pavement all around us. Then I heard additional volleys of automatic weapons firing. German security had arrived at the scene and killed the man. Liam rolled off of me and asked if I was okay. Before I could answer, I saw blood all over his chest. I managed to pull him to a sitting position, wrapping my arms around him and crying hysterically. "I love you," was the last thing he said to me as his eyes closed. "No. God, no," I yelled, clutching Liam's dead corpse as his blood dripped down my arms. I never felt the hands that yanked me away from Liam's body. As I watched several men place Liam's body on a gurney and rush him away, one of them yelled something in German that I didn't understand. Then another man helped me to my feet, and we began running to keep up with the 2 pushing Liam to a waiting ambulance. He was still alive, just barely. When we got at the hospital, Liam was taken into surgery, and I waited outside the operating room for many hours as the doctors fought tirelessly to save his life. I contacted my father to tell him what had occurred. "They'll leave your mother for a day or 2 with a nurse, and he'll be there as soon as I can to bring you home, Pumpkin." "No, Daddy, stay with Mom. She needs you more than ever now. No matter how everything turns out, I'm staying here by myself. For the first time in my life, there's someone more important than me." Before Liam was taken into the operation room, they handed me his personal belongings to keep. I searched through his wallet, discovered his mother's phone number, and then made the most difficult phone call of my life. "Hi, Mrs. Hall. My name is Emily Foster. I've got some pretty horrible news regarding your kid." I explained to her the circumstances that led to her son's shooting, and she started crying, so I gave her a few moments to calm down before continuing, telling her that her son was in surgery, but the prognosis was not good. I told her to get her passport and go to the airport, where I would arrange for an airline ticket to be waiting for her. When she informed me she didn't have a passport, never required one, it complicated matters. This was an issue that my father, despite all of his connections, couldn't solve. I promised her I'd phone her as soon as I knew of any changes in his health. I phoned her again 5 hours later. Liam had undergone surgery, and the doctor had told me that the following 72 hours would be vital for his recovery. I called every few hours with updates on his status, and we quickly became friends, no more Mrs. Hall, but Chloe and Sophia. The hours turned into days, and the days into weeks before he was well enough to be released from the hospital, and now it was my turn to accompany him home. I arranged for a car and driver to take us to the Hamburg airport. I didn't want to take the train because it brought back too many bad memories. Once we were safely on our way, I told Liam that I would take him home first, and then make my own way home. He just looked at me and muttered, "No. I promised you that I would see you safely back home, and I plan to honor my word." When we arrived at the airport, I had the driver drop us off at the square where the Hilton Garden Inn was located. Our original reservations had long since expired, so I had called ahead to secure new ones, and I was told that there was only one room available, so I had no choice but to book it. We checked in at the front desk and went up to our room, which Liam opened for me and stepped into. "Oh, looks like we have a problem," he said. "There's only one bed, so they'll simply sleep on the floor. This will not be the first time. Or, if you want, I can spend the night in the lobby." "You will do neither, Liam. It's a king-size bed, with plenty of space for the 2 of us. I will not assault you in the middle of the night. But that's a promise I may not be able to fulfill," I smirked. I awoke early the next morning, before Liam, and after showering and dressing, I slipped out of the room for a few minutes and made a call to my father. I had forgotten about the time difference, and his phone rang for quite some time before he answered. After I explained that everything was fine, I said to him, "Daddy, I have a big favor to ask." I explained what I wanted, and he stated he would do all he could. When I returned to the room, Liam was just getting up. "Come on, sleepyhead. We have a plane to catch." With our boarding passes in hand, we cleared the security checkpoint and proceeded to the departure gate, where we boarded and took our seats. It was only a short walk from the hotel to Terminal 1 and the Lufthansa desk. I had already made arrangements for our flight back to Boston Logan, so checking in was a breeze, especially since we were flying first class. Liam looked at me and said, "Really, Sophia? Really? First class?" Flying home in first class with Liam cemented my prior conviction that this lady was totally out of my league. I mean, 2 first-class tickets definitely cost her at least $10,000, and she spent money like there was no tomorrow. We arrived in Boston 8.5 hours later, and after passing passport control and customs, we entered the arrival hall, where Sophia recognized someone and took my hand, introducing me. Liam, this is Miles Griffin, my father's right-hand guy. George, this is Gunnery Sergeant Liam Carter, the man who saved my life twice. George shook my hand vigorously, slapped me on the back, and said that Mr. Williams would have accompanied him, but Sophia's mother was still recovering from surgery, and he didn't want to leave her alone. He walked us out of the terminal to the short-term parking lot, and after loading our luggage into the trunk of his car, we drove to Sophia's home in Newport, Rhode Island. A little less than an hour later, we pulled up to an ornate wrought iron gate that swung open, allowing us to drive up to the house. We had barely stopped and gotten out of the car when the front door opened, and an older man rushed out of the house, enveloping Sophia in his arms. I heard him say, "Thank God you're home safely, Pumpkin. Your mother and I have been so worried about you." After releasing Sophia, he grabbed me in a bear embrace and screamed, "You must be the man who saved my daughter's life. There's no way I'll ever be able to repay you, but I will damn sure try." Sophia's mother, I assumed, was sitting in a wheelchair in the foyer with a blanket covering her legs. When Sophia spotted her, she broke free from her father and hurried over, saying, Mom, what are you doing out of bed? Are you okay?" Sophia's mother grabbed her into her lap and hugged and kissed her when George mentioned another operation. "Calm down, Pumpkin. Calm down. Yes, I have had several surgeries. The first was 3 days before you were kidnapped. It was partially successful, but it encouraged me to continue in the hopes of walking again. The second one was just about the time you were supposed to originally come home. That is why your father was unable to go and get you. The final one happened just a few days ago. The doctors told us," she said, looking at Sophia's father, "there is no reason I won't be able to resume a full and active life in a few months." Sophia pushed her mother's wheelchair, her father took my arm, and we followed them into the sitting room, where she proceeded to tell her parents the entire story from the time she was kidnapped until we arrived in Boston. She did leave out some of the more descriptive parts of her captivity, and I don't think her mother or father could have handled the part about Omar Al-Farah's death. When Sophia recalled the event at the train station in great detail, her mother and father had frightened expressions on their faces. They paused her narrative to inquire how I was and whether I had recovered. Sophia resumed her tale after assuring them that I was well on my road to a full recovery. At that point, a member of the domestic staff announced that lunch was ready. After eating, I asked Mr. Williams if George could accompany me back to the airport, as I wanted to go home to see my mother and sister. "I'm afraid George isn't accessible at the time. He's doing an errand for me. As soon as he returns, we'll look into reconnecting you with your family," he said. "Let's all return to the sitting room," Sophia said. "We can sit by the fire for a while and relax. My wife and I have planned a party tonight to celebrate Sophia's safe return. We want you to be a part of this celebration. Please say you'll stay. I appreciate the offer, and under any other circumstances, I would accept. But I haven't seen my mom or sister in almost 3 years. I'm eager to get started," I remarked as I got up. "No, Liam, you must remain," Sophia shouted, gripping my arm. A voice behind me shared the same sentiment. I turned to find my mother standing there. She raced over, and the following several minutes were filled with embracing, kissing, and many tears. "I will admit, a lot of those tears were mine," I remarked gently. "How did you get here? I don't understand. How did Sophia and her father arrange all of this?" "I received a telephone call very early this morning from Mr. Williams telling me to pack enough clothes for a week, and for your sisters to do the same. I had to explain that both of your sisters were taking their final exams at the university. I knew they would drop everything to come, but I also knew that they had to stay behind and finish their tests. Mr. Williams had arranged for a car to pick me up and take me to the airport. This nice man," she continued, with no apology. "We'll let you two catch up," Thomas Foster remarked, taking his wife and Sophia out of the room. Wow, did we ever catch up on what had transpired? The last time I saw them, Mom informed me that both of my sisters were in their last semester of college. They were still staying at home for the time being. "Liam, please stop sending money home. I don't need it any longer." I was elevated to supervise the county's whole library system. The employment comes with a significant increase in compensation. You have made enough sacrifices for me and your sisters over the years. You have more than fulfilled your pledge to your father. He was very proud of you. But now it's time for you to focus on yourself, she remarked. Just then, Mom's phone rang. Olivia, the oldest of my two sisters, called to ask where Mom was. Mom informed Olivia what had occurred, and Olivia was ecstatic, shouting and pleading for Chloe to pick up the phone. Mom gave me her phone, and once the two of them had cooled down, I was able to explain what had happened. After I finished describing everything, I inquired about their examinations. They had each completed 2 of their final examinations and had 3 more left to conclude the semester. As we finished chatting, I advised them to study well and I'd see them in a few days. Sophia reminded me later that day about the upcoming evening gathering. It was scheduled to take place at the country club and would be semi-formal. Wear your dress uniform for me. I want to show you off to everyone, she screamed, kissing me on the cheek before skipping away. When we arrived at the club, the celebration looked to be already in full flow. Mr. Williams, wheeling his wife in her wheelchair, welcomed us in. Sophia grabbed my arm as we followed Miles Griffin, who was escorting my mother immediately behind us. Holy crap, there must have been over 100 individuals in the room. As soon as the audience noticed us, they exploded in shouts and applause. Sophia was clearly a very, very popular young lady. We were quickly surrounded by well-wishers and fans. Sophia was overwhelmed by her companions. She made every effort to involve me, but it quickly became clear that her friends were uninterested in me. One person was introduced to me as Dylan Bennett. He pushed me aside and hugged Sophia. I felt he was too friendly and close with her. To her credit, she pulled away from his grasp and rejoined me. Old boyfriend. Ex-old boyfriend, she muttered as he went on. He gave me a nasty, condescending look. Sophia retired to the ladies' room once the mob of well-wishers had dispersed. I took the chance to stroll outdoors into the terrace for some fresh air. Standing there, I thought about how annoying some of these folks were. Despite Sophia's efforts to involve me in the talks, several of them refused to recognize my existence. Standing at the edge of the terrace, staring out at the darkening golf field, someone grabbed my arm, swung me around, and got in my face. I want to speak to you, asshole. I don't know who you think you are with Sophia falling all over herself, hanging on your arm and everything. You think just because you saved her, it means something? My tax dollars pay for you to do that. You're nothing but an ignorant, stupid jarhead. You are not even close to being in her class. As he resumed his rant, a throng gathered among the visitors. Sophia, her father, and Miles Griffin pushed their way through the mob, just as I was about to give this scoundrel a lesson. Sophia's expression quickly shifted from shock and fear to rage. Dylan Bennett, she yelled passionately. How could you say such terrible things? Get out. Get out. Leave right now. Thomas Foster is not a little guy, but George was at least 5 inches taller and weighed 50 pounds more. Get the hell out of here. Right now, Peter yelled. George, help this piece of trash out of here. With pleasure, boss. Then George seized Reynolds by the collar and seat of his trousers. Frog walked him through the crowd and threw him out with a warning not to return. Thomas Foster calmed the throng down and stated, Sorry about all the commotion, folks. Now that we have removed that despicable piece of humanity, I need to explain a few things to all of you about this young man. This is more than just a celebration of Sophia. It's also a celebration to honor a man who has sacrificed so much in his own life for others. He then gave a short account of my life, beginning with my father's death and ending with my being injured in Germany. If this man had not been there for my daughter, she would not be alive today. My wife and I will be forever in his debt, a debt we can never adequately repay. Someone at the back of the crowd started to clap. Everyone started applauding and shouting. It took many minutes for the throng to calm down enough to hear Peter say, My friends, please, let's go back inside and resume the festivities. As we got back inside, Peter approached me and confided in me. I hope you don't mind me telling everyone about your private life, Liam. I had George check up on you several months ago. After all, Sophia is my only child. Your mother filled me in on all the gaps this afternoon. You are quite an admirable young man, Frederick Hall. I am proud to say I know you. Several days later, I had to inform Sophia that I had to return to Syria. I'd be departing in the morning. She was weeping, clinging onto me, saying, No, you have to stay with me. I need you. I want you more than anything I've ever wanted in my entire life. I can have Daddy fix it so you don't have to go back. I responded, Sophia, when I entered the military, I swore an oath, a solemn promise to serve and protect my country. What kind of man would I be if I went back on my word? The next morning, I departed. It was the most difficult thing I had to do in my whole life. Sophia was crying in her father's arms when I last saw her. 2 years later, I awakened from another hard night, this time with the same nightmare of the awful day when the love of my life abandoned me. There was no one in the bed next me. My new wife, who had only been with me for a month, was cooking breakfast for the two of us. She soon reappeared, bearing a tray of coffee and buttered bread. Sitting on the side of the bed, she offered me a cup of steaming coffee and a piece of toast. After you finish your coffee, well, talk about it, she murmured quietly. Was it the same nightmare? She inquired. I nodded my head. Yes, but the frequency of it has dropped significantly since our wedding. Sophia, it's been 2 years now. You have got to let it go. It wasn't your fault. No one blames you. But I blame myself. If I hadn't been so selfish, it never would have happened. All I ever thought about was me. Everything I ever wanted, I got. To be honest, I don't mind having nightmares. They serve as a reminder of how much I could have lost. Now I just need you to hold me, I whispered as my husband rolled back into bed, turned over to me, and held me securely in his arms, murmuring the same reassuring things he had used the night before to calm me down after my nightmare. I kissed him and caressed his exposed shoulder. My fingertips lingered softly over the wounds caused by the 2 bullets that had wounded him when he was lying on top of me, shielding me over 2 years ago. Looking into his eyes, I whispered, I love you so very, very much, Liam. Just hold me, and never let me go. As the days went, I gradually adapted to my new existence. The dreams remained, but they were less frequent, and I could almost tolerate them now. My wife, Ava, had become my anchor and rock. I couldn't stop thinking about Sophia every day. 2 years had gone, yet my heart still yearned for her. Despite my happiness with Ava, a part of me will always belong to Emily Foster, the lady I had saved. I hadn't seen her since the day I left the country club to return to Syria. The last picture I had of her was still distinct in my mind, tears in her eyes as she sobbed, clutching me tightly. It was difficult to let go of the lady I loved, particularly given the role we played in one other's survival. But the military, my obligations, and my commitments were an integral part of who I was, and I couldn't get away from them, no matter how much I wanted to. Still, life had gone on, and so had I. I had married Ava, and we had established a life together in a peaceful corner of the earth. Ava was everything I needed. Her compassion, sympathy, and acceptance of who I was and what I had gone through all contributed to the healing of wounds that seemed too deep to touch. We constructed a house together, one with room for our future and desires. But even as I settled into my new position as a husband, I couldn't stop wondering what had happened to Sophia. Was she happy? Did she find serenity after everything we'd gone through together? Would she ever look back on that period and think the same way I thought about her? Or was I only a footnote in her life story? It wasn't until one crisp autumn day, about a year after I returned home, that I received my response. The knock at our door was quick and unexpected. I opened it and saw a lady standing there, her eyes dark yet familiar. It took me a minute to identify her, but once I did, my heart almost stopped. Sophia appeared before me, as beautiful as ever, but the years had taken their toll. She exuded tiredness, a profound lethargy. Nonetheless, her presence exuded a sense of calm. Liam, she murmured gently, shaking. Before she could finish, I went forward, automatically reaching out with my arms. I'm not sure what pushed me to act, but it seemed right at that moment. We hugged, and I could feel her warmth against me, her body shaking slightly. For a little while, I was lost in the recollection of who we had been and the relationship we had formed. Where have you been? I said quietly, clutching her close. Sophia softly drew away, her gaze fixed on me. I've been trying to live my life, Liam. It hasn't been easy, but I've managed. She stopped and breathed heavily, as if carefully considering her words. I had to find a way to heal, to move on. I understand, I said, even though I didn't quite comprehend. You've been through so much. I thought about you every day. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of my words. I never stopped thinking about you. Sophia smiled, tinted with melancholy. I thought about you too, she added. But I had to learn how to live without you, Liam. I couldn't keep clinging to the past. It was too painful. I nodded, comprehending her words more than I cared to acknowledge. You're right. We can't stay stuck in the past. I've learned that the hard way. I've built a life, Liam, she said, her voice calm. I went back to school. I started working with a nonprofit organization that helps women and children who've been through what I went through. It's not easy, but it feels right. I glanced at her, the weight of her words hitting home. I'm proud of you, Sophia. You've done what so many people couldn't. You've taken the pain and turned it into something good. I admire that. She smiled again, this time with a genuine grin that extended to her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. You saved my life, and that gave me the chance to live it. I'll never forget that. I held her hand in mine, feeling the closeness we had once again, although in a new manner. We'll always have that, I remarked softly. No one can ever take that from us. We stood in quiet for a few seconds, just holding each other's eyes. It was a bittersweet reunion. It was evident that we had both moved on, yet the past remained between us like an old, familiar song we couldn't stop hearing. I came here to thank you, she said after a lengthy pause. Not just for saving me, but for giving me a second chance. I don't know where I'd be without you. You don't need to thank me, Sophia, I said quietly. I did what I had to do. You're the one who fought to survive, who built a new life from the ashes of the old one. You did that. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I didn't think I'd ever get the chance to thank you in person. I thought I'd always carry the weight of that debt with me. I smiled softly, stroking a strand of hair away from her face. There's no debt, Sophia. We were both in this together, and we both came out of it alive. That's all that matters. We remained there for a little longer, unsure what would happen next. I could sense Ava within, patiently waiting for me to explain who this lady was standing at our front door. But at that moment, I didn't want to explain anything. I simply wanted to stay with Sophia for a little longer, to appreciate the connection we had, even if it was only for a little while. I finally drew back and gestured toward the home. You should come in. Ava's inside. Sophia paused, her eyes going from me to the door and back to my face. I don't want to cause any trouble, Liam. I put my hand on her shoulder. It's not trouble. I want you to meet her. She knows about you, about everything. Sophia paused before nodding, her shoulders easing slightly. Okay. As we walked inside the home, I knew it wouldn't be the last time I thought of the lady I once loved. But I also knew I'd made the correct decision, that I'd created a life with someone who loved me and who loved me back. I was glad for the time I spent with Sophia and the link we formed, but I had moved on, as did she. The reunion was heartbreaking, but it also served as a reminder of the human spirit's resilience. We had both come from darkness and made our way into the light. Finally, it was all that mattered. That is the conclusion of Liam and Sophia's tale. Do you believe they'll ever really move on? Please let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.